Okay, hello and welcome to The Great Gatsby, chapters 1 through 4 video lesson. I'll try to be as quick as possible. We could not hold live class today because of some computer technology problems. So here we go. Goals and objectives for today are analyzing characters using direct and indirect characterization. Direct characterization is when the author gives you information directly, says, hey, this character is nice, or hey, this character is a jerk. Indirect characterization is that when you have to infer based on the character's speech, thoughts, effect on others' actions and looks. So they don't come right out and say it, but they give you a lot of information to help you make a judgment. The types of characters are flat, round, static, and dynamic, and I'll explain the differences between those. A flat character is one that is stereotypical, simple, one-dimensional. They never change. They are exactly how you expect them to act. And the example here is Tom. He is the rich kind of jock guy. He doesn't change. He doesn't have any other elements to his personality. He's not secretly a nice guy with a soft heart. He is what he's described as. A round character, by opposite, is multifaceted, complex, breaks out of stereotypes, hard to pin down. These characters would be Gatsby and Nick. Gatsby, no one can seem to put him into a category. He is complex. He defies our ability to pin him down or typecast him. And Nick is the same way. He seems to have a lot of different, aspects to his personality. He's not really a stereotype. He's kind of like can do a little bit of everything. He can blend into different scenarios. Now, flat and round are opposites of one another. Static and dynamic are opposites of one another. Static means that the person or character never changes. The personality stays the same throughout. Sorry about that. Tom's personality never changes, so he's flat and static. But Gatsby, his personality doesn't change either. He stays the same throughout in that aspect. So he's round and static. Dynamic would be the character changes, learns something, has an epiphany or an aha moment. This one's Nick. So Nick is both round and dynamic. So just because you're one of these does not mean you're automatically... So just because you're flat doesn't automatically mean you're static, I guess is the take-home message here. Now, when you're reading any novel, you're going to be questioning characters. Do they change? How and why do they change? What is the process of their change? What do they learn? These are all clues to a theme. Theme can typically be figured out by looking how a character changes over time, or how a character reacts, overcomes, or does not overcome their conflict. Usually a lesson is tucked away in there somewhere. Does what they learn help or hinder them? If they do have an epiphany, is it going to make them worse off than when they started, or better? And then characters with contradictory traits. So maybe there is a character that's a bad guy, but plays with children, kind of like Despicable Me, how he's like the evil villain, but he has a soft spot for his kids. So you're looking for characters with contradictory traits and figuring out what that means. Characters that have epiphanies or aha moments. And then does their speech, thoughts, effects on others' actions or look reveal anything about them? So these are all questions that you're asking yourself as you read the book. Nick is the narrator. The point of view of this novel is a first-person point of view. Nick is our point of view. We only see and hear everything as he has seen and heard everything. So we have to figure out if he is a reliable character, a reliable narrator or not. We know that he comes from the Middle West, from a pretty well-to-do family. We also know that he's not as well-to-do as some of his neighbors, like Tom and Daisy. But he's probably upper middle class. He came to the East in order to do the bond business, which essentially is he's becoming a stockbroker on Wall Street. So he is interested primarily in wealth. While it doesn't come directly out and say how old he is, we can infer he's probably in his mid to late 20s. And does he seem likable? Why or why not? Personally, he seems likable to me because he talks about not making judgments. He admits to being awkward at times. He doesn't seem to jump on situations where it would make him look necessarily negative. There's lots of opportunities in Chapter 1 at that dinner party that he could come out as being racist, sexist, so on and so forth, but he does not. So compared to the other characters, yeah, I like him. Do I believe him to present the story honestly? For the most part, for the same reasons that I like him. I know he's going to be somewhat biased. He's a fairly rich white male, so he's been privileged all his life, so he may not have a good perspective on some of the poverty issues that we're going to get into, but I trust him to see and do as best he can. I don't think he'll lie. Dinner at the Buchanan's house. One word to describe the dinner party. My word is awkward. I would have hated to have been there, but we'll talk a little bit about what happens at that party, and it sets it up in order to look at the characters. This is where we find out more about them. In class, you would have looked at, each of you would have looked at a different character, but your characterization worksheet homework will take care of this, but not in the same indirect characterization way. We know that the things Tom says are a little bit racist. We don't have any thoughts from him. His effect on others, he makes situations pretty awkward. His wife tense. His actions in this particular Chapter 1 scene seem to be not so great. He's taking calls from his mistress. He's trying to keep control. And his looks, he's very polished polo player. Daisy is, breathy, speechless, whispering kind, which makes me kind of hate her, actually. She tells us some of her thoughts, especially about her daughter, that she hopes her daughter would be a beautiful little fool. So she doesn't see women or her own self as having much power. Her effect on others, she seems to be a little bit charismatic for them, like people are interested in her. Her actions, looks, she's a beautiful golden girl, right? And Jordan, by contrast to Daisy, is she's more involved in gossip. She's looks more boyish. She's a golfer. She's an athlete. Some other actions, she's trying to overhear conversation. So we have the gossip, the kind of flighty, ditzy woman, and the jockish, rich jerk stereotypes going on here. Then we get to Chapter 2, which is Tom's mistress, Myrtle. If we want to compare Myrtle and Daisy, they're quite opposite people. Myrtle is very brash, very loud. She's lower class. she's even, they describe her as kind of being meatier or bigger than Daisy, but kind of in a sensual way. So the question I'm asking you is, why do you think Tom is attracted to Myrtle? It doesn't come out and say this, but you should support your answer with some knowledge about Tom's character. Why do you think he would go off with this woman when he has a perfectly good wife at home? Chapter 3 is all about Gatsby's party, describing the party. Fantastical amusement park, the most rockin' party you will ever go to. At the party, Nick hears lots of rumors about Gatsby. I'd like you to think about what he hears about Gatsby in particular, and based on Nick's description of Gatsby's party, the partygoers, what kind of person do you expect Gatsby to be? The party is so bombastic and fantastic, Personally, I expect someone who is just out there, completely wild and crazy, to be hosting it. But that is not the case. Gatsby's very reserved, isn't drinking. So the kind of party that he throws and the kind of person he is seem to be contradictory. When Nick's walking around the house, he meets a guy he calls Owl Eyes because of his big, large glasses, and they observe that the Gatsby's library is full of real books. Now, if you've ever seen movies with the big libraries, with the multi-story libraries with ladders, kind of like Beauty and the Beast, when Belle goes into the Beast's library and it's full of books. Rich people, they would have these libraries, but what happened was they would normally be fake. The books would just be like, it would just look like the spines of the book, but there wouldn't be a book behind it. So Owl Eyes sees that every book is actually real, which would have been an ostentatious, amazing show of wealth for someone to be able to fill their library with all real books. So that little indirect characterization for Gatsby is just showing his immense wealth. And one thing Owl Eyes observes as well is that the books aren't cut, meaning books the way they're published, the pages, you have to cut them open for them to fan out. So while these books are real, they haven't been read. All right. And then Gatsby at the party, he reveals about himself that he was in the war, in the military with Nick, and that kind of puts Nick at ease a bit. Chapter 3, we see a lot of bad driving, and this is going to be an ongoing motif in the novel. Gatsby's guests are poor drivers. Nick accuses Jordan of being a rotten driver. So I have a scene here. How does this scene characterize Jordan and others like her? He says, "You're a rotten driver. Either you ought to be more careful or you oughtn't drive at all." "I am careful." "No, you're not." "Well, other people are." "What's that got to do with it?" "They keep out of my way. It takes two to make an accident." "Suppose you met someone just as careless as yourself." "I hope I never will. I hate careless people. That's why I like you." This characterizes Nick as being cautious and everyone else as being reckless. And so we'll be thinking in the future a lot about this idea of recklessness, carelessness, and the consequences of it. Chapter 4, East Egg versus West Egg. Nick takes the whole few pages in the beginning of Chapter 4 to describe people from East Egg and West Egg. What I want you to do is tell me what the differences and similarities there are, and which group of people seems to be better or worse, and why. That'll be one of your questions in the quiz following. The upper class is clearly divided into two types, old money and new money. Old money are the East Eggers. They are the ones who are independently wealthy. They inherited their money. Trust fund babies. These are Daisy, Tom, and Jordan. Their culture seems to be a bit elite, snobbish, superior. Then you have new money, which is where Gatsby falls in, and these people live in the West Egg. These people have recently acquired wealth. They're probably in the entertainment industry, meaning movies. Remember, now talking movies are now in, celebrities, music, that kind of thing. And these people seem to just throw their money around because they haven't had it all their life. They don't know what to do with it, so they just bling it out, right? They're uninhibited. Chapter 4, we also learn a lot about Gatsby. One of the questions in your quiz will be to tell me about Gatsby's story that he reveals to Nick, what proof he provides, and tell me if this evidence is convincing to you or to Nick, and why not. We also meet Meyer Wolfsheim. He is a gambler, probably a gangster of some sort, and I want you to think about how credible he is as a testimony of Gatsby's character. Why would Gatsby choose him, of all people, to back up his story with Nick? And then finally we end with Jordan's story. She reveals to Nick what Gatsby told her at the party. Why does Gatsby tell Jordan rather than Nick? Why does Jordan support this meeting? And we'll leave with the final quote. All right. Thank you for listening to our 15-minute video. If you have any questions, please contact me, but we will go over chapters 5 through 7 on Thursday.